a moment of madness in the provincial health department. Our anguish is exacerbated by the fact that the disease constitutes some of the most vulnerable members of society who are in need of even more protection than the rest of society. That the idea behind Gauteng Mental Health Marathon Project, as it came to be known, was to save money, adds another dimension to our disappointment and pain. I wish to put it on record that at no stage did it emerge, directly or indirectly, implicitly or explicitly, that the Department of Health nationally or in any province has run out of money to take care of mentally ill patients. There was hence no reason for so many vulnerable people to perish on account of money. I interrogated this issue with the Premier of Gauteng Province because I wanted to understand what actually the Executive Council in the province discussed and approved. He told me that the issue never featured on the agenda of the Executive Council, but that he, as the Premier, was told that the Department of Health has 4,000 beds in public health institutions, which they would like to use, and that there's absolutely no reason to continue contracting private service providers when the public sector can provide that number of beds. This august House must please note that the SABC contract was for 2,000 patients. Hence, the statement from the department to the Premier was to the effect that they can accommodate them twice. The Premier assures me that at no time was the issue of NGOs ever raised until that fateful day in September, when the MEC made an announcement of 36 deaths in provincial legislature. At the national level, we have got the MINMEC. Like all the MINMECs, it consists of the minister and MECs. But in addition, the MINMEC at the national level has the Surgeon General of South African Military Health Service and SALCA. It is therefore a statutory body. When there are huge undertakings in health or elsewhere that may affect health, the MINMEC usually sits and even go into recess. We did so with the FIFA World Cup. We did so before the president launched the huge 8-city campaign to test 15 million South Africans. We did so in the advent of Ebola 2014. I want to state here today that the issue of moving health patients in Gauteng, which clearly falls within this category, has never been mentioned even once in the National Health Council to be dealt with like all the other major events. We take the death of so many citizens in very serious light and will therefore like justice, not only to prevail, but also seen to be done. I believe by now, Parliament more or less knows what happened. Hence, I wish to spend time explaining what we have done. As we have come to understand it, the Department of Health wanted to move mentally ill patients out of life is demanding. When families were informed of this, they objected because they were satisfied about life is demanding. Together with South African Depression and Anxiety Group and the South African Federation of Mental Health, they approached Section 27 to take up the matter with them at the provincial level. When Section 27 realized they are not going anywhere with the provincial department, they prepared to go to court. While the court case was set, they conducted the Director General in the National Department of Health and informed her of this problem and the court case, and that the Minister and the Premier of Gauteng will be cited even though no relief is being sought against them. The matter was set for the 22nd of December 2015. However, on the 21st of December, a day before the court case, the parties decided to enter into a settlement agreement and not go to court. The settlement agreement was very clear and simple. Among others, it stated, 1, that the parties shall henceforth engage in discussion aimed at resolving the dispute between them by no later than the 31st of January 2016. 2, for avoidance of doubt, the Gauteng Department of Health shall maintain the status quo by not placing users from life is demanding facilities in any other facility pending the conclusion of the settlement. 3, that the outcome of the settlement discussion is intended to inter alia address the plan for the placement of users following the termination of the contract between Gauteng Department of Health and its domain. And 4, all stakeholders shall endeavor to reach an agreed plan by no later than 31st January, guided by the constitutional imperative on the Gauteng Department of Health, and shall at very least endeavor that users receive health and other services of no lesser quality to the services that they are currently receiving at life is demanding in order to protect, promote their constitutional rights. These honorable members is what the party signed for and agreed upon. And they said there was no need to make it an order of court because they are all in agreement. These honorable members, please know that the agreement says nothing about NGOs. It just emphasized that wherever they are being taken to must be places of no lesser quality than Levis Dimeni. I interrogated this issue with Section 27, and they said they had no reason to suspect that anybody was planning any foul play, and hence did not insist on the agreement being made an order of court, and they had informed the Director General of Health to this effect immediately after signing. Unfortunately, as it is, Gauteng Department of Health did not honor the agreement at all, and in March 2016, Section 27 rushed to court when they heard that they are about to start moving patients contrary to the agreement. This time, they did not inform the National Director General of this development because they wanted an urgent court interdict. Unfortunately, the Gauteng Department of Health was able to convince the court that they are honoring the plan, that they will not deviate from the agreement, that wherever they move the patients, it will be in line with the agreement, that the services will be no less than lesser than the quality at life is demanding. Hence, the court dismissed the Section 27 interdict. Armed with this court case, the Gauteng Department of Health fobbed off any attempts by the National Director General and the National Chief Director of Mental Health, who was supposed to have been invited to all the meetings in Gauteng where the plan was tabled and executed. They said that the court of law was agreeing with them on every issue. But what happened next is completely against what they told the court. Firstly, NGOs were issued invalid licenses, as the health impact discovered later. The licenses were issued by the Director of Mental Health instead of the HOD. Secondly, the NGOs went to Levis Dimeni to pick up patients on their own and brought them to their homes without files, without diagnosis, without all the necessary ingredients. It was difficult for relatives to know where they are. It was in September 2016 when the MEC announced in the provincial legislature that we realized that something has gone dangerously wrong, and I hence appointed the health ombuds to investigate what actually happened and who did what. The health ombud made findings that this project was indeed negligent, chaotic, and hurried, but also violated the rights of mentally ill patients and went totally against the principles of health, the preservation of life, which is the preservation of life and not the opposite. They were in all 18 recommendations. In carrying them religiously, we want to correct anomalies that happened. The first serious anomaly we picked up in Gauteng National Provincial Department was that the Mental Health Act and the National Mental Health Policy Framework were not followed. One of the findings of the Ombud was that this national plan was selectively interpreted, misinterpreted, and contravened. All the checks and balances which were strenuously coupled together were left. To protect mental health users and ensure their safety and security, Mental Health provides for the formation of mental health review boards in each province. Unfortunately, in Gauteng, the Ombud found that the Mental Health Review Board is moribund, was not effective, had no authority. That's why the chairperson of that is also being charged. I appointed a team of 60 experts who, for 3 days last week, visited all the NGOs. 7 of them have been closed. 600 patients have been moved to government facilities. We are left with 700. And Chairperson, I want to emphasize that we have now opened an operation center, which by next week will work on the 24-hour basis. No stone will be unturned. There will have to be court cases in this case where the National Prosecuting Authority will decide who to prosecute and who not to prosecute. There will definitely be inquest for each and every death, which will be conducted by the magistrate. There is no way that anything will be swept under the carpet because it's not possible to do so. We are taking this opportunity to apologize deeply to the families affected. At every corner, we are working with them. We are not taking any decision alone. Thank you very much.
The Honorable James. Madam Speaker, let us take a moment to think about the Isidameni victims and their families who have suffered a terrible and unnecessary loss. Today we must commit to confront this tragedy head-on, to face up to the suffering of the most marginalized and vulnerable members of our society. We must face up to the 102 South Africans and counting who are beyond hearing our apologies and hearing our lamentations of regret. We must do so because we cannot allow this to happen again. We must do this and demand justice. Speaker, the quality of a minister may be measured by how he or she responds to a crisis. As soon as he learned about the Isidameni deaths, Minister Motsoaledi responded immediately, and he appointed the Health Ombudsman, Dr. Malagapuru Makgoba, to investigate and to report, which was released recently, and this report is a model of exactitude. But Speaker, it was too late, and as a result of which there are 102 preventable deaths of the most vulnerable citizens of our land. Dr. Makgoba rightly fingered Gauteng Health as primarily responsible for frontline management failure, but there is a deeper chronic failure of surveillance, of communication, and of emergency response capability that afflicts the health system from the bottom right to the top of Minister Aaron Motsoaledi himself, which is why the DA called on President Jacob Zuma to appoint a judicial inquiry to get to the bottom of it. The question to the minister is this: why were you, one of the most powerful, influential and alert individuals in our land, not aware of this unfolding tragedy when it happened? It took the DS Jack Bloom to extract the mortality figures from MEC Kodani Mashlangu as if they were state secrets. The Director General of Health, Precious Matsoso, knew there was a serious problem in January 2016, but after the court order in favor of Gauteng Health, she actually let the issue go when she should not have. Why is it that DG Matsoso or you did not make it your business to find out what was going on? Speaker, I would like to remind the House about the gravity of this tragedy. Listen to the testimonies taken from the Ombuds report. Here's one. Some NGOs were like concentration camps, overcrowded with unkempt and hungry patients suffering from severe weight loss. There was no food to feed patients because Gauteng Health Department took 3 months to pay. At Mosego, people had no clothes. Patients were left dirty and poorly groomed. Corpses had unexplained bruises on their bodies. Some relatives did not know where their relatives were, and some do not know to this day. Post-mortems were not done. Where most deaths occurred, facilities lacked appropriate health professionals. Madam Speaker, what is to be done? The Ombudsperson made 24 recommendations, of which the Minister has completed a few, and as we heard today, he is busy with more in what is a work in progress. But our efforts must radiate wider than the Ombuds recommendations, critical as they are. More must be done to ensure that the vulnerable are protected in our country. First, our country needs a responsible and alert health leadership across all spheres of society and of government, resting on what is known as a real-time disease surveillance system. As soon as there's a problem and as soon as there is a death, it must show up in an objective national system of surveillance. This requires the rapid establishment, as the Minister knows, of the National Public Health Institute of South Africa, which has been delayed for much too long and is still being delayed. Second, legislation must be changed so that the Office of Health Standards Compliance may proactively inspect all health facilities as well as all para-health facilities provided for health service use. Third, Minister Motsoaledi complains about the lack of timeous legislation, amending the arcane Inquest Act of 1959, for example, but his own ministry is the laggard in pushing forward new and amendments to legislation. Fourth, The position and responsibilities and lines of accountabilities of members of executive councils, the provincial MECs, should be made more strictly and clearly in terms of its subject matter. First, there must be explicit performance requirements. Two, there must be transparency of operation. You cannot have an MEC say, this is the number of deaths, only and operating like she's sitting in a dentistry where it takes the extraction of teeth to get at numbers. It cannot be so. It must be transparent. Together with reporting systems aligned to performance requirements. Third, there has to be unconflicted compliance on MEC's part to the law. And fourth, there must be unconflicted accountability to the job at hand. Fifth, Health Director General Precious Matsoso recommended rightly that a Chief Medical Officer position be created in the National Department of Health. Sixth, the human resource qualifications architecture must be reviewed to ensure that health professionals are not amateurs around all of our health facilities. Seventh, Minister Motsoaledi must use the power he has of legally withholding conditional grants more effectively to exact compliance with provinces that honor our national health laws as long as they do not compromise access to health. Minister Motsoaledi pussyfoots too much around ANC intra-party sensitivities in the province. He must stop pussyfooting around that. Minister Motsoaledi's default reaction to provincial problems is to pull issues back into an overburdened National Health Department. You should remember that mental health was under the National Department till 1999, and it was not a good story. Provinces absorbed the mentally infirm at the time of what's known as deinstitutionalization. How, may we ask, will the National Department run mental health services at a primary care level, at a community level, at a step-down level, and at the hospital level? Remember, the human resource portfolio for health sits in the province, not in the National Department. The DA believes that mental health should be integrated with general health care and catered for all spheres of care. Speaker, I asked Minister Motsoaledi in committee when he first learned of the unfolding SABC tragedy, when others below him, as well as Section 27, already knew. He did not say. So I asked him a question again. Tell me, when did you first learn about the unfolding tragedy? But I asked two more questions today. Tell me why it was so late in the process. What is your diagnosis? And how would you suggest we, as well as you, live as a nation with this tragedy? For today, those who died bear on our conscience, and we stand before you, the dead, in your silence, with your families and relatives in shame. I thank you.
The Honorable Tembe Kwayo. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The death of over 100 mental patients at the hands of the ANC government in Gauteng is the single most indicator post-1994 of the astonishingly shallow pit levels to which the former liberation movement has sunk. We can all stand here and speak from a detached position, play politics and try escape responsibility. But the reality of the matter is that more than 100 South Africans who had the misfortune of being mentally diseased perished at the hands of a democratic state. More astoundingly, the ANC government, as was the case when it murdered workers in Marikana, refuses to take responsibility. It's not enough that Ketani Mahlangu resigned. It's also not enough, Speaker, that the ANC government comes here and offers half-cooked apology. It is not enough that Mr. Zuma comes here and half-heartedly offers his condolences to the families of mental patients his government killed. We need a government that takes responsibility. What happened in Gauteng is demonstrative of the state of neglect of mental health generally in this country. Despite legislative frameworks available for the protection of mental health patients, the ANC has not prioritized their well-being in all respects. When the Mental Health Care Act of 2002 was implemented in 2004, it was hailed as one of the most progressive pieces of mental health legislation in the world. An entire chapter was dedicated to human rights for those with mental disabilities. Furthermore, the MHCA contained articles addressing compulsory admission, protection of patients' property, rights to appeal, the reporting of abuses, and the formation of independent review boards with ombudsman functions. It also highlighted several important principles, including the use of the minimum possible compulsion, the importance of not just treatment, but also rehabilitation and reintegration. So what we found in Gauteng is not just complete disregard for well-being of other human beings, which the ANC government has carefully built its reputation on recently, but the conduct borders on rabid illegality perpetrated with sheer impunity by people who think their hold on political power grants them license to maltreat South Africans. We have here a government that has no respect for its own laws, no respect for the people who put it on power, no respect for anything but their stomachs. Of course, Speaker, what is left unsaid here is that Ketane Mahlangu moved patients who had been at life isidimeni for almost all their lives to NGOs with close links to her ANC comrades. In their unbridled corruption, even the life of those who are abled differently is dispensable. We need to stop this road. We need to have all those responsible behind bars. We need, Speaker, to have those NGOs, the Gauteng department officials, and the politicians who instructed them to be arrested. It cannot be business as usual when more than 100 of our countrymen and women died from starvation, dehydration, and other preventable causes. And as EFF, we pass our heartfelt condolences to the families of the deceased and promise that we will leave no stone unturned until the murderers responsible for the death of your loved ones are brought to book. Madam Speaker, we also promise all those frustrated by government inaction in dealing comprehensively with mental health challenges that we will hold the Department of Health accountable for its inaction. I thank you.
The Honorable Msimang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It speaks volumes about a government that through its reckless carelessness consigns its mentally ill to non-governmental organizations that were not properly vetted, accredited, or properly equipped and resourced to treat such patients. More than 100 souls unnecessarily lost their lives in this continuing tragedy. Such negligence and culpability is tantamount to murder, and government, through its delegation of responsibility to ill-suited and ill-equipped entities, is a party to this horrific crime. Officials at the Gauteng Health Department involved in the irregular issuing of licenses to such unvetted, ill-equipped, and under-resourced NGOs must be held criminally accountable. A full forensic audit must be conducted with twofold intent. Firstly, to identify and hold to account all individuals involved in allowing such a tragedy to occur, and secondly, to identify processes that must be put in place to ensure that such tragedy never occurs again. Minister, Your ill-fated policy to deinstitutionalize when not having the requisite outsourcing checks and balances in place has now cost the lives of over 100 South Africans. How is it possible that patients were allowed to be transferred from licensed to illegitimate institutions? The Office of Health Standards Compliance is just as much to blame. Where were they? Why was there no vetting of these NGOs? Honorable Speaker, it is unconscionable that vulnerable citizens who have placed their faith and trust in government to look after their well-being have had their trust betrayed in such demonic, reckless, careless, and negligent manner. Basic human rights have been trampled underfoot by the state and these NGOs. This will forever be a shame on this government. Let us ensure that such diabolical maltreatment never occurs again. The IFP sends its heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of those that lost their loved ones in this terrible tragedy. I thank you.
The Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, Honorable Ministers, and distinguished guests in the House. Let me start off on behalf of the National Freedom Party to extend our condolences to all those that have lost loved ones in this tragic incident. Honorable Speaker, when one looks into the investigation which was initiated by the Minister of Health, and he must be commended for doing that, one would identify and find a whole lot of reasons and challenges. But I want to reiterate what the National Freedom Party has said before. It is simply as a result of the ministers or national departments have very little say, or it's not within their mandate to either appoint MECs or HODs in the provinces that you find a situation like this. Now, I am not saying that as a result of that, that this is acceptable. But let me also go on to say, it's easy to sit here and blame each other. What has happened in the province of Gauteng is totally unacceptable. But let me add, what about all the oversight from the provincial members of the legislature of the health committees in Gauteng, together with the department officials? What have they done to ensure that this does not happen? Because we all have an equal responsibility. Now let me also tell you, we talk about going to court. Yes, this matter went to court. So why did we stop? Why? Because poor lives don't matter. Is that why we stopped? Why didn't we continue and fight the Department of Health in Gauteng and ensure that these patients are not transferred and never allow it to happen? We did not do that. But we're going to come here and we're going to grandstand at the expenses of those people's lives that we have lost. That is what is happening here. Now, Honorable Speaker, when you read the report of how these patients were transferred from one place to the other, it gives you an impression that they were sent to die, simply sent to die, because they were tied, like some of our apartheid people do, or our people tie them at the back of the buckies. These patients were tied, put at the back of those buckies, and transported to the NGOs which were not registered. Now, what the National Freedom Party is saying, all those that are responsible, members of the provincial legislature, part of the health committee in the province, the NGOs, those officials, the MEC, must all be held accountable. And whoever is responsible must be charged criminally, and civil claims instituted against those to benefit those next of kins of those people that have passed. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Macheke.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, the strategic question that we need to ask is whether ours is indeed a caring government.
Point of order, Speaker. I need.
Order. Order, honorable members. Where's the point of order?
Sithi bayangxola mama, ndicela ubathulise qha.
Order, honorable members.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
What's the point of order, honorable member?
No, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to give cold water to the member because he is very hot about this matter.
That's not a point of order. Honorable Machege, please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and honorable members. The strategic question that we need to ask is whether ours is indeed a caring government and to what extent are we building a truly caring society. I make this point because it is my view to the tragedy of SABC are the values and ethics that defines our government and the society in general. I heard repeatedly by government statements and officials that we have a caring and a pro-poor government. My question is, what does that mean? And what makes a government a caring one? I remember a biblical parable of a good Samaritan that illustrated who is your neighbor. Let us take this example to examine this question. One father says to his children, I quote, I love you, I cherish you, and I care about you, a close quote. But every week he squanders his salary on gambling and extravagant life. So much so that there is not enough left for his children to have adequate food, proper shelter, or clothing. And another father says to his children, I quote, I love you, I cherish you, and I care about you, close quote. But this father is careful with his salary, making sure his children are provided for first before he spends anything on himself. If there is not enough to go around, he will do without in order that his family is provided for. Now, if we were to apply that to our government today, which father would our government be in the context of the current debate? We are told that what drove the Gauteng government was the need to save at all costs, including the cost of losing precious lives. A government that really cares about its people is one that puts its people first, and one that is careful about the people's money it is managing on behalf of the people, not its leaders. Honorable Speaker, a successful government is one that establishes a pattern of behavior which enables it to deliver the care when it really matters. So the claims that you are a caring government are a clang of a hollow vessel because unlike the Good Samaritan, you have failed to deliver sufficient care
Honorable member,
when it
Honorable
really
Mbata,
counted in SABC.
can you please, excuse me, Honorable Machege, Honorable Mbata, please respect the House. Please proceed, ma'am.
As I close, Honorable Speaker, a caring government must value high fairness and social justice for all. Indeed, the struggle for liberation will never be over until a caring society is built at the hem of which is a caring government. Thank you.
The Honorable Alberts.
Thank you, Speaker. Die enigste wyse om te reageer op die minister se verklaring is om te vra, hoeveel mense gaan nog sterf onder die heerskappy van die ANC? What happened to those poor mentally ill patients who truly represent the weakest of the weak under the watch of the ANC government is not only tragic, it is not only a gross violation of human dignity and the sanctity of life, it is not only in violation of the Constitution and every human rights treaty imaginable, it is not only against the laws of natural justice, it is not only an offense against God himself, but it shines a light deep into the dark, deep soul of the ANC and confronts us with a truth that few dare to speak before. And that is that the ANC government and its deployed cadres are not merely negligent in their intent and actions, but that the ANC is intentionally indifferent to human suffering while professing to be a beacon for humanity and civilization. This indifference is built on the quicksand of dishonesty and political expedience. You see, it works like this. While one would expect people and men like al-Bashir and Mugabe, when they get hold of you, to treat you indifferently, the ANC, on the other hand, creates an expectation of hope and humaneness. But instead, people get slaughtered. And when the going gets tough, for the ANC, it very quickly descends into political expediency by playing the race card to deflect attention away from its own indifference. Its indifference is magnificently reflected in its denial of an opportunity by the members of this House to show its respect to the mentally ill patients that have passed away. Not only did they die on your watch, they are ignored even in death. Daar is talle voorbeelde van mense wat slagoffers is van die houding van die ANC. In Suid-Afrika gaan mense na staatshospitale toe om te sterf en nie om gesond te word nie, omdat hulle blote nommers is en skape op pad na die slagpale. In Suid-Afrika kom boere van die kerk af terug by die huis net om gemartel te word en vir skape keel afgesny te word, want hulle het mos die grond gesteel. In Suid-Afrika word vroue verkrag, want hulle is mos blote objekte. In Suid-Afrika word kinders verniel, want hulle sou nie dieselfde regte hê as volwassenes nie. Hoekom moet hulle dit hê? In Suid-Afrika sterf soveel mense op ons paaie, omdat die owerhede meer belangstel in geld maak en geldinvordering as padveiligheid. In Suid-Afrika sterf heeltemal te veel mense. And those people die under the watch of the ANC while they are eating our taxes, and while they are gorging themselves on tenders, while they profess human rights and use poetic words in their speeches, but act like leeches. How much more can we
On a
as a
point of
society
order,
tolerate
Speaker.
until something breaks? How much?
Order,
Who
Honorable
feel
Member.
here
Honorable
with mense
Albert,
staff?
can you take your seat, please? Yes, Honorable Member, what's the point of
Honorable
order?
Speaker, I'm rising on rule number 85 to ask if it's parliamentary for the member to say that the ANC is actually slaughtering people like sheep. We take the matter as serious. We know that the big mistake has happened, but nobody slaughtered anybody unless he's got evidence to the effect.
The question of referring to a party is not usually seen as unparliamentary, but we will look at the context after studying the Hansard. Please proceed, Honorable Alberts.
I'm saying the ANC is indifferent to what is happening. Hierdie slagting moet stop, want die vraag is, wat gaan julle doen as die vernielde hond eendag omdraai en begin byt? Watter gevleelde woorde en rassekaart gaan julle dan red? Dink bietjie daaroor na. Thank you.
The Honorable Madisha.
Thank you very much. Cope says to the families and the relatives of the deceased, you deserve more than an apology, and not only an apology, but action. I say this because what happened contradicts Section 11 of our Constitution, which says that everyone has a right to life. We say to the nation, your government has failed you. The entire system has failed you, be it the political executive of government that initiates actions and oversees its implementation, the administration that is tasked with the implementation of political decisions, and yes, us too, some here in Parliament, be it at national and or provincial level, who are tasked with exercising oversight over the executive and holding them to account. Even the Human Rights Commission is complicit. Its ability to preside over an investigation into this matter is questionable given the inaction of certain commissioners as the tragedy unfolded. Some of them remain commissioners in the newly constituted commission. A tragedy is defined as, quote unquote, an event causing great suffering, destruction, and distress, such as a serious accident, crime, or natural catastrophe. Esidimeni was neither an accident nor a natural catastrophe. Its genesis was criminal. There must be consequences. There must be criminal prosecutions. The Esidimeni tragedy points to the failure in the morality of those entrusted with our governance. And Honorable Groenewald, for example, pointed out, we know who is the needle of our moral compass. The words of Matthew Sposa, and I agree with him, I refuse, he says, as a disciplined cadre of this, he's referring to that former movement, he says, I refuse as a disciplined cadre of this movement to have my coffin buried in the same graveyard as leaders who have made the choice to place their own corrupt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The death of more than 100 mentally ill patients in Gauteng province last year has deeply shocked the nation, and the ACDP joins people across the country in expressing sincere and heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of the deceased. This exposure of the department's lack of monitoring, capacity and budget, societal neglect and Parliament's inadequate oversight is devastating, and we stand collectively responsible even as we interrogate the situation to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. The decision to terminate a contract between the Department of Health and Life Esidimeni, a service provider that had been delivering healthcare services to indigent patients under contract to government for over 50 years, we are told, has had horrendous consequences and forced us to take stock once again. So many life and death decisions are taken at a policy, financial, pediatric care had to be moved to families has resulted not only in the breach of their rights under the Constitution and the Mental Health Care Act, but a death sentence. The bottom line was money, of course, but lack of budget. But there was also a policy imperative to deinstitutionalize, two factors which placed Treasury and the ANC's policy-making body in the mix of those responsible. This is a national tragedy. We are all implicated in some way. Yes, there must be political, civil, and criminal accountability and inquests into all deaths to establish the causes and the appropriate steps that should follow. And the removal of all surviving residents from unlicensed and incapable NGOs is non-negotiable and must take place immediately. But it must be safe, dignified facilities, and this will cost us. The ACDP calls on government to urgently investigate how patients went from a licensed institution to unlicensed ones and to review and amend licensing policy and practices where necessary as they apply across the country. The ACDP also calls for a review of policy on institutions, on plans for mental health care services countrywide, and an increased focus on monitoring and compliance. This may have happened in one province, but our eyes must be on all. The ACDP has for the past few years been pleading with government to respond adequately to the plight of vulnerable people with regard to special housing needs. This includes mentally ill people. And we again call on government and Minister Sisulu to prioritise the approval and implementation of the special needs housing programme policy that has been waiting 15 years for approval before some other avoidable major disaster also ends in tragedy. Thank you.
The Honourable Jafta.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The life healthcare Esidimeni shenanigans have reminded us our painful history of neglect, maltreatment of the vulnerable, and human rights violation. To our credit, the Department of Health National is on course to salvage this crisis. The Portfolio Committee on Health received a well-established, detailed, and comprehensive report surrounding the death of mentally ill patients in Gauteng from the Health Ombuds and the Department of Health. It is clear from the findings of the Ombuds that the province was irresponsible in transferring mentally ill patients to unlicensed NGOs without consulting the national department. Honorable Speaker, the powers given to the health MECs in provinces should be reviewed, especially Section 43, subsection 1 and 2 of the Mental Health Act of 2002, which empowers the head of provincial health departments and the relevant review board in the department to order state patients to be transferred to another designated health establishment, despite any determination by the head of the national government. Section 25, subsection 1 of the National Health Act 2003 should also be reviewed to confer the Minister of Health provincial health jurisdiction. We therefore support the department's plan of action to implement the 18 recommendations issued by the Health Ombuds and that corrective measures be undertaken to bring to task the identified health officials in the province. Honorable Speaker, the AIC conveys its heartfelt condolences to the families of the deceased and their immediate relatives. This tragedy should have been avoided. I thank you.
The Honorable Prowama.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, Isidimeni is a first ANC Nazi camp. The Premier David Makura have the grave of this. The Premier David Makura have the grave of these South Africans died while they were still alive. Honorable members, we are all humiliated by this act of barbarism. It was a policy of extermination against mental ill patients. This is a gross betrayal. What is painful is when the Premier declared that he knew nothing. This Premier must be suffering from amnesia and ignorant. Gauteng province is not in safe hands. Such incompetence and poverty of leadership. It was embarrassing and shameful when the Premier wore a sack of cloth and flagellated himself like the Pharisees. Honorable members, this was indeed a Nazi-like camp, characterized by sorrowful circumstances. Even Adolf Hitler would have given Premier a pat at the back. Our glorious page of people with Ubuntu will forever remain tainted. On behalf of Arang SA and myself, we mourn with the families who lost their loved ones. As the former MEC of Health in the province of Gauteng, may you search your soul and clean your conscience. You and the Premier are guilty of this madness. Honorable members, our people are no longer safe under this government. Their ruthlessness, lack of decency and humanness make a mockery of our hardly fought human rights. It is suicidal to think that the ANC will redeem itself. We should not wait until our country is reduced to a rotten carcass. Honorable Minister of Health, we sympathize with you. We can see you are running like a headless chicken. That provincial department is in an advanced stage of decay. Your conscience is heavy on you. It doesn't help to apologize on behalf of people who their hearts are dark as hell. Arang SA supports your endeavor and wish you the best in this difficult task.
Thank you. Honorable Mbinda.
Chairperson of the session, Manbulele, as the PAC once again, we forward our heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families of the deceased, and we say the passing of your loved ones came to us and the entire nation as a shock. This is a shock that leaves many questions unanswered. May God be with you in these trying times to help you heal. Inkosi ke iniphe amandla. Once again, the ANC government is exposed as to how low they think of our people and their well-being. Honorable Motsoaledi, we will not go quiet, when you want to use this house to advance your own internal organizational battles by trying to clean your name and better position yourself from what one scholar named it as a dog-eats-dog syndrome in the ruling party. We know very well that you are one of those who are not in good terms. This parliament should not be turned into a tool for people to come and campaign for their internal party leadership differences. No amount of fancy words can reverse the damage you and your government has done to the affected families. Chairperson, I kept asking my fellow comrades, what is the recorded cause of death of these patients? Because all we are getting is that they were admitted as patients due to them being mentally ill, which to my understanding, that is not what caused their passing away. I hope that the recommendations from the Ombudsman will be immediately implemented. There are pressing issues, Honorable Chair, in Tshwane. Once again, our people are up in arms against their fellow African brothers and sisters from across Africa. As the PAC, we condemn these violent attacks that are Afrophobic in nature. The ANC government must be held accountable as the real frustration of our people, that their levels of poverty are still in place. While white foreign nationals whom are in charge of our economy are staying in luxury peace, while our people are deliberately made to fight against themselves. We call upon all of them to refrain from this barbaric act that they are busy with. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Godi.
Honorable House Chair, comrades and honorable members. The APC joins this House and fellow South Africans in pledging our solidarity and heartfelt condolences to the families of the deceased in what is now the infamous SABC debacle. Our sacred duty as society and government is to take care of the most vulnerable in society. And in the case of the SABC victims, we have dropped the ball with horrible consequences. The APC condemns in the strongest terms the health department in Gauteng for failing to do due diligence. People dying simply because of neglect clearly reflects that the said NGOs did not know what they were doing and they were in it for the money. This is criminal. But there is a fundamental ideological question here. Government must take charge and deliver social services. The capitalist idea of commodifying everything and its accompanying greed is the root cause of this tragedy. Shoddy governance is merely an enabler. The fundamental problem is privatization of social services. Currently, supported by the National Department, all provincial departments of health are using NGOs to hire home-based carers and HIV counselors. This leads to greed, the super exploitation of the workers, and government shaking its responsibility. The APC condemns this practice. If there is anything to come out of this tragedy, it is for policies to change in favor of government directly providing critical social services. The APC wish to applaud Dr. Malegampuru Makgoba, the health ombudsperson, for the good work he has done. Esidimeni, the place of dignity. How ironic that the deceased suffered and died in indignity. Etlane role. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mahlalela.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Deputy President, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members. The ANC as a people's movement and a caring organization, we want to take this opportunity during this trying times and difficult period in the history of our country to extend our deepest sympathy and condolences to the families of the more than 100 most vulnerable people who died under the care of the Gauteng Department of Health. In doing so, we equally want to thank the Health Ombuds for his excellent work by producing this impeccable report with far-reaching recommendations. We believe that the full implementation of the recommendations was supported and directed by the President during the State of the Nation address will go a long way in addressing the weaknesses in the mental health system of our country. As the ANC Honorable Chair, we are in full support of all the recommendations of the Health Ombuds, and we shall do all in our power to ensure its full implementation, both by Gauteng government and the National Department of Health. The Minister, together with his department and the Office of the Health Standard Compliance, have already appeared before the Portfolio Committee with a detailed implementation plan as well as progress made since the release of the report 22 days ago, of which the Minister has already shared with this House in his speech earlier on. We are therefore convinced that the report of the Ombuds is comprehensive enough, covers all aspects, and therefore don't see any necessity for the appointment of a Judicial Commission of Inquiry by the President to conduct further investigation. This view is first and foremost informed by our belief that the Health Ombuds is independent, impartial, and therefore convinced that he performed this work in good faith without fear, favor, bias, or prejudice. Section 88A of the National Health Act, as amended, provides that anybody of the office or any findings and recommendation of the Ombud may lodge a written appeal with the Minister. The Minister must, upon receipt of such an appeal, appoint an independent tribunal, which must be chaired by a retired judge of High Court or a retired magistrate. It is therefore a view that anyone who is not satisfied with this report of the Ombuds into the circumstances surrounding the deaths of the mentally ill patients should accordingly use this provision as provided by legislation instead of rushing to the President for a Judicial Commission of Inquiry. We are therefore calling upon all us as honorable members, as stated by the statement released by the family today, that we should not claim to do things in their interest without consulting them. And this is what they have said in the statement, and I quote, "We have already endured painful months of waiting and interviews during the Health Ombuds investigation. We urge political parties not to make us repeat that pain or make it in vain," close quote.
As we do all of this, Honorable Chair, we should, as respected honorable members and responsible leaders, respect and honor the wishes of the families. During the healing ceremony which took place last week on Saturday, which was attended by both the Premier of Gauteng and the Minister of Health, these families made a special plea, which they've restated in their statement today, that as they mourn the tragic death of their loved ones, as politicians and political parties, we must at all times avoid using this tragedy as a political football. Let's give this family space and allow them to peacefully undergo the healing process. The ANC is, as a disciplined force of the left, organized to conduct consistent struggle in pursuit of a caring society. We commit ourselves to respect and honor the wishes of the families, but we shall, at the same time, continue to pay special focus to these most vulnerable people in our society, while ensuring that the recommendation made by the ombuds are implemented so that the restorative justice is achieved, and by so doing, assist the families to find a sense of closure into the matter. We shall continue to ensure that critical elements of our value system, which is based on human solidarity and the spirit of Ubuntu, shall at all times include our pride in social activism and respect, as well as serve those most vulnerable people in our society with honesty and humility. As part of our agenda of social cohesion towards the construction of our national democratic society, we shall continue to ensure the protection and advancement of those who are most vulnerable in our society, especially the mentally ill patients. As we continue to advance this noble idea of a caring society, we are highly encouraged by the announcement made by the Minister of Finance yesterday during his budget speech that the NHI Fund will be established this year and will initially focus on, among others, the improvement of services for people with disability, elderly, and more importantly, mentally ill patients. As part of our support to the Health Ombuds recommendation, we will make special plea to the South African Police Service to fast-track their forensic investigation, which is currently underway, so that actions where deemed appropriate and justifiable can be taken as to ensure that those found to have grossly violated the rights of these most weakest members of our society are held accountable. We further appeal to the South African Human Rights Commission to ensure that it undertakes those systematic and systemic review of human rights compliance and possible violation nationally related to mental health as recommended by the Ombuds. As part of our pursuit for national democratic society, we shall ensure that the protection and continuous care of our people with mental illness, recognizing the rights of individual dignity and proper care, we need to decisively deal with all the current fault lines that still persist in our public health system, which threaten our social stability. Let me conclude, Honorable Chairperson, by saying, Honorable Minister, never and never again should such tragic incident ever happen where so many of our vulnerable people under the public health system die. Never again should cost consideration be used as a means to override the imperative of quality of care and therefore put our people's lives in danger, like the so-called Gauteng Mental Health Marathon Project has done. It is regrettable, Honorable Chair, that some political parties had decided to use this opportunity as a political grandstanding.
Honorable Mahlalela, please take your seat. What is the point of order on which rule, Honorable Member?
I want to ask the member of a question, actually, Honorable
Okay,
Chair, because I want
Honorable
to check. He
Member,
said the same
don't
when
ask the
Marikana
question. Let
happened,
me ask first.
that never again will people be
Honorable-
killed under the ANC.
Honorable members, let us remind one another, when you want to ask a question, you should get permission. Continue on. Do you want to take a question? Honorable Mahlalela.
Well, unfortunately, Chairperson, I don't take question to political parties who doesn't have direction.
Honorable Mahlalela, continue. He doesn't want to take the question. Thank you.
On a point of order, House Chair.
Honorable Mahlalela, take your seat. On which rule, Honorable Member, are you rising?
On a point of order, in the rule book that you have there.
Yes, which rule?
You must know what is the rule book number.
No,
Point
no,
of
no,
order
no,
is
no.
permissible
The point
in
of
terms the
order
rules
I
of this
know
House.
is Rule 92.
the one
I
that
just
says-
want to know on which rule or whatever principle you want to talk
The
on.
principle is that
Okay, thank
this
you.
member must not come here and mislead the House and speak about never
That's
the
not-
ANC.
okay,
He's
that's
going
not
to
a-
kill people, because after you
That's-
kill people in Marikana,
That's not a point
you
of
say the
order,
same thing
Honorable
that won't
Member.
kill people.
Thank you very
You
much.
kill people in
That is
Gauteng
not
now,
a point
and
of
that is
order.
your
I'm going to
nature.
switch
The
off your
EFF
mic.
is the only
I'm going to
political
switch
party
off
with
your mic. That's
direction.
not a point of order.
Must not speak confusion
Continue,
here.
Honorable
Okay.
Mahlalela.
I'm saying it is very unfortunate, Honorable Chair, that some Mickey Mouse political parties have decided to take this opportunity to use these tragic incidents for political grandstanding instead of addressing the issue that is currently prevailing the nation. We therefore call upon all of us as honorable members to truly respect the wish of the families. And I would like to appeal to all of you, just go and read the media statement that I've quoted substantively, that they've just released today. And we are saying there will be justice because the South African Police Service is currently undergoing forensic investigation. And once they've completed, everybody that will have been found to have violated the rights of those individuals must face the might of the law and let justice be done. We can't be judges ourselves here. We don't have that responsibility. So let's be responsible and not behave like children. I thank you.
Thank you. I'll now invite the Minister to conclude the responses to the statement. Thank you. Honorable Motsoaledi.
Thank you, House Chair and honorable members. I want to take off where Honorable Mahlalela has left. Our apologies to the families is not informed by what us in this house or as politicians think. It's not a public relations exercise. That's why we do it when we meet them, even in the absence of yourselves and the media. We've already met these families many times. We had a meeting with them on the 5th of February, and we apologized and we discussed the matters. And the statement they released today is because on the 5th of January when we met them, they said we must appeal to political parties and lawyers to start harassing them and to stop making their pain a political football. That's why there were calls of national days of prayer, national days of mourning. They stopped us. They said, please don't do it until we say so. They said, please concentrate on our pain because we are still in trouble. The moment you do all those things, you'll forget us and go and shine on the stage, in stadia and halls and churches. And they begged us that this must not happen. On Saturday last week when we met them, they asked so again. And because we don't seem to be stopping, that's why they issued a statement today, again saying, please stop this thing and concentrate on us. And even for the lawyers who keep on phoning them, when the Ombuds has clearly outlined the legal processes in this document, they also said they must please stop. Honorable James, I agree with you that we need to hasten the establishment of the national system of surveillance. And I can assure you, on Tuesday this week, the NAPIS appeal that you are talking about, National Public Health Institute of South Africa, has gone through the Cabinet Committee. It's going to go to Cabinet next week. It will pass through this House. And that surveillance system will start having it in the country. The second thing I want to advise you about, Honorable James, is that whether we change the manner in which the national and provincial relate with each other and works is also one of the recommendations that we must review the Mental Health Act 2002 and the National Health Act 2003. I've already selected a review panel. The matter will come here. The parties will debate. It will be debated like any other act. But first of all, it's been reviewed. It's not just going to be changed unilaterally because the Ombuds said so. That's why he didn't say the minister must change. He is ordering a review because during the course of the investigation, he has realized certain weaknesses in what is happening in the acts, both the Mental Health Act and the National Health Act. The EFF is claiming that we are not taking responsibility. We are definitely taking responsibility. Recommendation 17 is clear about how government must take responsibility, and we have already started. It says in recommendation 17 that the National Minister of Health must lead and facilitate a process jointly with the Premier of the province to conduct all affected individuals and families and enter into alternative dispute resolution process. This recommendation is based on the low trust, anger, frustration, loss of confidence in the current leadership of the Gauteng Department of Health by many stakeholders. The National Department of Health must respond humanly and in the best interest of the affected individuals, families, relatives, and the nation. The process must incorporate and respect the diverse cultures and tradition of those concerned. The response must include an unconditional apology to families, relatives of the deceased, and those patients who are still alive. So this apology is also inside this recommendation. It goes on to say, as a result of the emotional, it goes on to say the outcome of such a process should determine the way forward and such a mechanism to withdraw and compensate. It goes on to say a credible, prominent South African with an established track record should lead such a process. And this weekend, rather on Friday, the Premier has just phoned me that we are meeting with the families, Section 27 and their representative, to decide on who is this credible South African, who will carry this mission and the process. I agree with EFF that there were too many illegalities. We have never hit them. There are definitely illegalities in what has happened. And I've quoted some of them when I was talking. The manner in which the patients were moved, there were a lot of illegalities. The manner in which the Mental Health Review Board, which should have signed off whether patients moved or not, there are lots of illegalities. The manner in which the licenses were issued, there were lots of illegalities. The manner in which the NGOs took the patients, There were lots of illegalities, we accept that. And that's why the Umbads here spoke about them and what we indeed need to do. As for the NGO, whether they must go to jail or not, Chairperson, I've been in the health sphere for 34 years now. I haven't seen human beings acting this way. Even if they are NGOs, we can't accept the situation where an adult member of the public goes to a well-established institution with a license, valid or invalid, takes a human being which they don't even know, they've never even met, without records, without knowing the diagnosis, without knowing the treatment, take them and put them in your house and try to take all of them and end up not giving them food. You don't need to go to any medical school for that. It's common sense. Only a person with courage that is misplaced can do that. So there's no way the NGOs will be left. Any human being cannot be allowed to do that. The first thing is that you'll be scared. Who is this person in my house? What are they suffering from? Where are their relatives? What am I going to do with them in my house? Because mental health is a lifelong thing. It's not something that is going on. It's not like taking somebody who you found drowning and put them in your house to help them. You're going to live with them forever. So they are going to have to account. They can't be left. And that's why there are going to be an inquest. An inquest is headed by a magistrate. Each and every death is going to be accounted for. How it occurred, who will have done what. The other thing is, even if a politician like myself or the MEC write a letter and say we are terminating this project, as they did, every patient who's admitted in an institution is controlled by a doctor. You can't leave an institution until the doctor discharges you. If there is an insistence from anybody that you be discharged, then you must sign an RHT form, refuse hospital treatment. So one of the things that we are investigating is whether indeed these patients were discharged or they were stolen, which is now a legal possibility in the manner in which they were taken. The issue of whether ANC is indifferent won't be judged in this house by politicians with agendas. The judgment of whether we are indifferent or we are caring will come from the families themselves as they meet with us. They are the only ones who can make that judgment call. I agree with COPE that they don't deserve only apology but action. And I've already shown you. Action is in this document that there might be criminal prosecutions, but it's not you who decide who must be criminally prosecuted. It's the NPA, as you know. And it says here that all the investigation by forensic investigators and other law enforcement agencies must be given to NPA. It must decide who must be criminally liable and who must be charged. From the ACDP, the process of deinstitutionalization, which you thought is imperative, is clearly outlined by both the World Health Organization and the National Mental Health Policy Framework and Strategic Plan is clearly outlined line by line when you deinstitutionalize. I can confirm to you as I'm standing here that what the officials in Gauteng Department of Health did was not the institutionalization. Even in the agreement document they signed, they never mentioned anything about what they eventually did. And that's why legal processes must be undertaken to see what have happened. To the PAC, that there are many questions that are not answered. No question will go unanswered. That's why there are going to be inquests. No question will be unanswered because it's clearly written on what we need to do. Finally, when the Minister of Finance stood up yesterday and mentioned that a national health insurance fund will be implemented, he said something that is going to be a litmus test to this house. He said to establish these finances, we are going to review the tax credits. Tax credits that are going to the rich, which amounts to 20 billion to do this fund. You are receiving those tax credits. If you put your money where your mouth is, you will support that we do away with the tax credits for those people who are on medical aid. We take that money, we help poor patients, including the mentally ill patients. Then I'll say you are talking.
Thank
Not
you.
what you are doing here by
Thank
shouting
you,
and all
Honourable
that. Thank you
Minister.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you, honourable members. That concludes party responses to the statement. I will ask the secretary to read the first order of the day.
Consideration of report of ad hoc joint committee on appointment of board members to National Youth Development Agency.
Thank you. Honourable Lesuma will introduce the report.
Masibonge mhlali ngaphambili wendlu ehloniphekileyo. Bongqongqoshe masekela bongqongqoshe malunga ahloniphekileyo kulendlu namalunga omzansi mzi wonke ophelele sifisa ukunibingelela. Siza ukuthula lo mbiko wekomiti lesikhashana ad hoc committee, joint ad hoc committee of the NYDA appointment of the board. Umbiko wethu uzoba ngalolu hlobo. Siza kubeka inhloso ngqangi yalo mzimba, izindlela esizihambileyo, izincomo namazwi okuvala. Our democratic government established the NYDA.
On a point of order, I was checking. Get clarity quickly.
What's the point of order, honourable member?
What is the time allocation for this process? How long is it going to speak? And how long are other members who are going to speak there? Because there's no speakers list that is provided for here.
Do we, and I don't want to complicate matters that are straightforward, maybe we should just speak generally about contracts. But you understand the terrain we're entering into, and the law advisors gave us advice when we are considering different versions, the probabilities, the substantiating documents. We don't have the time today. We are making certain findings, but I just wanted to illustrate this as an example where there's a direct contradictory version. Now, it might not be that that sentence means that the 90-10 local consultation with stakeholders, including Parliament, but you see there's a direct sentence that says, no, but Parliament applauded it. So we need to be careful that we don't open ourselves up to later contestation when people, SABC comes and says, but Parliament on this and this date, the Communications Portfolio Committee applauded that. And we now saying Parliament never considered it. I don't want to complicate matters. I'm just highlighting an area that we need to be cautious about, Chair. Okay, thank you.
What are you suggesting we do? Because what you are highlighting, sir, is going to be on every observation. We must take a stance and pin our colors to the mast at some point.
We have largely, and we've further considered the submissions that have been made. So we have considered the SABC submissions, and so we are making these findings in accordance with having read and considered all the submissions. That's the point given. So I'm just saying when we make specific reference to specific instances, then we might need to be aware there might be elsewhere in our report